Hey everyone, Cynics here. Today's video is for a special occasion. I recently reached 200,000 subscribers. Now, you may remember when I reached 100,000, Breath of the Wild had recently come out, so I did a little fan art of Zelda for that video. For this one, I thought it would be fun to do something similar, and since Super Mario Odyssey came out a couple months ago, it seems like a good time to try some Princess Peach fan art. I'm going to be leaning more toward realistic proportions, so this might get a bit weird because Mario characters are extremely stylized and deformed. Regardless, I practiced a bunch of reference drawings aiming for a certain expression, and I think this sketch managed to capture what I was going for. A princess that is completely bored of this constant kidnapping. So while I work on that in the background, I have a very special gimmick for this celebratory video. I'm going to be doing an AMA and answering a non-stop barrage of questions. I asked Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, Discord, and even 4chan to ask me any questions they wanted. And I got a lot of questions, so it's time to zoom through as many as I can. Sorry I can't do them all, but let's just get into it. First up, Twitter. How did you go about advertising, marketing yourself aside from YouTube? Did you go to conventions with your portfolio and so on? Actually, I'm the worst person to ask about marketing. I do very little advertising and marketing. I built some sort of little following just by being very active on forums back in the day, such as concept art. But really, I just transferred that little fan base into YouTube, and it's been a very small and slow growing snowball. What was the point that you really started to believe in your abilities and skills as an artist, or are we all always doomed to doubt our own work? I would say I started to get a little bit more confident based on the reactions of other people starting to enjoy my artwork, but it also comes from the fact that positivity and confidence has such a strong effect on our ability to improve. So having a healthy mindset is really something you need to work on and improve just as much as any other fundamental. What the F ever happened to Hardcore Pix? Well, I wish I knew. He was my most influential and inspirational artist starting out. I think he just went on to work as an art director at some studio, but I like to think that maybe he's off somewhere mindlessly painting away on a single layer of a digital painting for the past 10 years. The original Paintsplorator. How to introduce yourself and your art to other artists who are already industry level and you're just a hardworking noob starting out. Well, unless you have a really interesting design sense, chances are they're not going to be super interested in talking to you, but I strongly recommend making friends with other artists of a similar level who you think have the potential to one day be professionals, because chances are they will be, and then you'll have a bunch of industry level friends. What's your favorite animal? Well, that's easy, a red panda. Any points on incorporating graphical elements in illustrations and making them look more finished? Sure, try to incorporate a simple box or triangle in the background of every drawing you make. So in your sketchbook, every thumbnail, every little thing, take a box and try to figure out a cool way to incorporate it into the background behind the character. If you can get good at that, you can step up to more complicated graphical shapes and eventually you'll be great at it. Quick belated question, any apps render the Fibonacci sequence? Maybe? I have no idea. Will something like monthly inspirations ever come back? Probably not. They required the most effort to make and were the least popular videos on my channel, but I still like them, so maybe there's always a chance. If you want to watch some though, go back and watch the old ones. Does teaching art make you happy? Also, how do you stay motivated to draw? Yes, teaching art makes me very happy, and I would say I stay motivated just by looking at super awesome inspirational drawings by other people. 4th year of art school, and I'm applying to jobs with a high quality looking resume with 2 internships and 6 completed games. However, I've applied to over 100 various game and design studios and keep getting rejected. Well, that's a tough one. I recommend focusing on your social networking skills more than anything. Join communities, be a part of different things, make as many online friends as you can. Maybe you'll be able to find a job through doing that stuff, because most companies fill positions with people they know before they even start looking at outside sources. How did you find your style? I know that you have a distinct style that is very unique. Also, how would you describe it? Style usually comes from the influence of the artist that inspired you. So if you do a lot of studies of different artists you like, chances are your style will be an amalgamation of those artists. There's also a little bit of style that comes from the tools you use. I really don't know how to describe my style. I guess you can say confidently ugly. What's the best tactic for someone from overseas to land a job as an artist in the USA, Canada, in your opinion? That's actually super difficult unless you're a really good artist. I recommend just moving here first. Maybe you can find a nice lonely Canadian girl that will marry you. Ladies, when did you begin to feel legit to make videos about how to paint? Well, I never made videos because I felt legit. They were more so to just share my own process because I thought it was fun to watch other people paint, and then I just share my own little observations and things I'm trying to focus on and learn about. You don't need to feel legit to do that. Would you do a paint over pals with one of my bad pieces? Nope, you gotta be a patron for that. That's what they pay for. Ni shou zhang wen ma? Boo. I just know how to pick up girls. Dear Cynics, give us a hint of which exciting project are you up to in this year? Okay, well, I'm working on a mech series. I'm trying to do a lot of mech stuff. And aside from the corner kick, I'm also doing another little graphic novel game project thing that's just for fun. I think that's enough. What's your daily routine? How much is scheduled and how much is spontaneous? Plans make me nervous, so I actually try to function spontaneously as much as I can. So there's no real routine, I just kind of dump all my energy into whatever I'm focused on at that given time. I have been going to the gym every couple days though, that's new. Gotta get swole. What inspires you the most? I would say cool industrial design with awesome shape language. Any tips on drawing and painting fur? Let's see, keep it simple, keep it chunky, and focus on the edge control more than anything. The break between a highlight and a shadow is really where you should be showing the most of what a texture is. I just want to ask, I fall in love with a girl which is my classmate. I cannot work very well when we come together. When I'm in university, how can I focus on my job? Did you ever live something like that? I don't know, really. What can I do? I hope you got me. Well, I think I got you, but sadly I went to an all-boys high school and I never went to college, so I've never even remotely had the chance to be in that situation. I don't know, either ask her out or find something really annoying about her and just focus on that. How strong is the computer you're working with? Mine is very slow and it freezes all the time and it really holds me back from being able to practice my digital art. Well, my computer is actually not very good. I got it for $350 about 6 years ago on a Black Friday deal. It's surprisingly holding up just fine though. It's stable, which is the most important thing. My only advice is that when you do find things working in a somewhat stable way, just don't change anything. Who is your favorite manga artist? What do you think about Kentaro Miura's work? Well, strangely enough, Berserk is my favorite manga, although I don't know if he's my favorite manga artist. It's a bit too detailed dense for my tastes, although I definitely appreciate it. I don't actually have a favorite manga artist that I can name off the top of my head. Have you ever worked in game development or film pre-production, and if not, would you? Yes, for EA, I worked on previs for a Wing Commander game, which never made it to production, but that's kind of something. Of course, that was like 10 years ago when I was pretty bad, but nonetheless, I don't think I have any interest in really getting back into that scene. What is your motivation for drawing and painting? Any special reasons? It's mainly the challenge at this point. I love the challenge of trying to do stuff as well as I can. That drive, that competitive nature to be the best at something. What are your thoughts on photo bashing? Well, I think it's fine in concept, but most people use it to hide flaws in composition and storytelling, so it doesn't really work that well in the end. If you don't have good shape design and you can't make good compositions, then you really shouldn't be doing much photo bashing. In a purely aesthetic sense, I definitely prefer more painterly looking art. If you had to live in one animated world, which one would you pick? That might be the toughest question I've ever heard. There's so many to choose from. I don't know. Maybe something like Naruto's world where everyone's ninja, but they're still really comfortable and they got good food and technology too. It's like the best of everything. Although they don't have cool mechs and robots, so that's a little bit of a letdown. I really have no idea. Do you ever get so caught up in the idea of practicing to get better at art that you forget why you wanted to get better in the first place? I would say I used to, but these days getting better is its own reward, so not really. I know you were a big computer nerd before getting into art. Did this ever make you feel divided or unfit as an artist compared to stereotypes? Also, do you still tinker with computers? Honestly, not really. I feel like most of the concept art community is pretty nerdy in their computer skills and everything. It's not like artsy fartsy type stuff. So I've never really been a part of that community, or else I would feel a bit divided. But in the world of concept art, everyone's kind of a technology dork and all into electronics and stuff. I don't really bother with computers that much, but I still tinker around with electronics and things like that once in a while. While you're drawing, do you listen to music or sit in silence? Oh, I always listen to music. I hate sitting in silence while drawing. What's your ultimate finale goal in your artistic journey? I don't know, I guess to be the number one best artist in the world and just get to travel the world doing workshops and selling books and things like Kim Jong-il does. Favorite bird? Well, I really love parrotlets, but if it goes for just aesthetics, I really like sun conures. The perfect bird would be a parrotlet that had the coloring of a sun conure. That would be amazing. Alright, I think that does it for Twitter, so let's see what Facebook has for me. Why are line art so damn hard to get clean? And which are the different types of line art? I've seen different things in line art, and how did you get it? Oh man, I hate cleaning up line work. It's like my least favorite thing to do in art. In fact, I just don't ever want to do it again. I like just drawing directly and not having to clean up anything. So I would recommend, if you're having trouble with your lines, try to focus on big, swooping lines and don't worry too much about making them super clean. I don't know, I'm a bad person to ask about that. So do you prefer your pancakes thin or thick? And what do you put on them? What a great question. Well, as much as I would love to say thick, I actually love thin pancakes. The best pancakes I ever had were these thin little fried ones that you can get in Sacramento at Harry's Cafe. So if you're ever in Sacramento, go to Harry's Cafe and try some of his Harry pancakes. Oh, I'm getting hungry now. Hey Cynics, you and people always talk about your 6 months art progress before you started getting professional work. What approach did you take during the 6 months blah 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 to get what's the recipe, etc.? Well, it was really just supreme focus and doing a ton of stuff from both imagination and copies of other artists. Also, the secondary very important quality going on there is that I was looking at art anytime I wasn't drawing. So just filling your brain with as much art as you can, trying to discover new artists every day. Just doing all of that stuff will make you a much better artist in a very short amount of time. What is the percent ratio you would say making something you like is planned or comes off by accident or intuition? I watch Kim Jong-il draw and it looks like he always draws very meticulously without it looking like he never messes up. Okay. Well, I don't think Kim Jong-il never messes up. I just think when he does mess up, he does it so confidently that you never really notice. I would say I do things in every different way just depending on what my goal is. All of my favorite things are the ones I've done by accident though. Hey Cynics, what is your recipe against harsh self-criticism? I don't know, sprinkle in a little sugar and don't let anything get to you. What is your favorite animated series of all time? Probably Cowboy Bebop. What would you choose of the following if you had to? Having an unruly cat as your left hand or giving birth to a burrito every morning? Well, I feel like giving birth to a burrito is such a private thing, you don't even really get to enjoy any benefit from that. At least having an unruly cat is kind of interesting. You might be able to get a TV deal or something. But most importantly, how do you give birth to this burrito? That's the thing I really want to know. But I'm going with the cat. I think regardless, we gotta go with the cat hand. Even if it's unruly, it still sounds adorable to me. Would be interesting to hear how your depression affected your art efficiency and how you overcame it. Perhaps some advice for yourself in hindsight. Well, my depression completely shut down my art efficiency. I don't really draw much when I'm depressed, so it sucks, and I have zero efficiency, and I overcame it by talking about it and getting help. So perhaps that's the best advice, just talk about it early on, so you don't have to wallow through it forever before you actually get over it. And don't talk about it just online, I mean talk about it with people like your family members and friends. What kind of fundamentals would you recommend to master or have some idea of by the end of high school? And what do you do specifically to learn it? Well, personally, I didn't learn art in high school, but I would say I think the most important thing to get a good hold on is probably just not quite perspective, but drawing things in three-dimensional space. Practice your visual spatial awareness so you can turn things in three-dimensional space and just kind of be able to move things and understand how they work in space. So that incorporates perspective and everything, but it's also a visualization thing. So draw a thing and then try to draw it from a different angle just by moving it in your brain. Start simple and then get more complicated and make sure each one of them is in perspective with the other one. Did you have moments in your path to mastery where you discovered new knowledge or a new technique that essentially leveled you up? If so, what was your favorite discovery? Well, I think every path has tons of discoveries that lead to new knowledge, so I don't know, it's hard to pick one. I think everything revolving around design theory is probably my favorite, so things about big, medium, small, or how visual libraries worked, those were always my favorite discoveries. What's a fair rate to charge for a fresh freelancer? Maybe some guidelines for what the normal range is. Well, I'm pretty out of the freelancing scene, but let's just say you should think of your hourly rate. Maybe as a newbie, I don't know, let's just say $30. That sounds good. Go with that. So I don't know what your skill level is, and it's very dependent on that and what the type of work you're doing is, but just assume maybe like, I don't know, $30 an hour. If you had to start from zero again, what would you do differently from the way you learned art the first time? Oh, I don't know what I would do differently. Everything's always a process where you're running into an obstacle and having to overcome it. So it's hard to say about different stuff that would require running into different obstacles. But I would definitely encourage myself not to take giant breaks from doing art like I did for so many years. Did you take freelance? What is your rate? Or you earn money from being full-time YouTuber? Can this cover your life expenses? Well, I don't take any more freelance, so I don't have a rate, and I try to make my money by doing teaching at the college and by YouTube and everything. It kind of covers most of life's expenses. It's not the best though, but I'm happy at least. Hello Cynics, I once watched a video of you in which you said you stopped drawing for a season. What were the steps you took and made you enjoy drawing again? Well, I wouldn't say just a season. I stopped drawing for years at a time throughout my whole art career. Definitely lots of seasons off and on. I think those all had to do with stress and negativity and anxiety, so as soon as I found a more happier state of mind, that's where I started enjoying drawing again. How can I overcome being fixated on a certain art style and not liking my own work because it doesn't resemble that art style? Oh, that's kind of a strange problem. If you like a certain art style, you should just copy it a lot until it starts to fit into your own style. Just do lots and lots of art studies of whatever artist you like, and it will eventually fix your own style into whatever style you like. How did you support yourself while grinding from not good to pretty gosh darn good? Well, this was definitely my main trick for becoming an artist in my 20s, and that trick was to have parents that support you, because I'm stupid and I just lived at home and lived off my parents like a bad person, and if you can't do that, well, it's gonna be a lot harder. But at least it kind of worked out and I found my career and blah blah blah, so it's just luck. Not everyone has that, so what can I say? I'm spoiled and I'm dumb. Your fave music genre and how it affects your workflow. I think over the course of my art career, I've gone through every genre of music, from really dark metal to hip hop to rap to, I don't know, light indie folk music. Currently, I listen to a lot of synth pop and just kind of upbeat stuff, and that definitely helps my workflow. It keeps me in a good energy, very positive, and very motivated to keep drawing. Could you give some tips on how to get better on blending with the dry brush and Corel Painter? Well, it's a little bit tricky, but the key is to not even worry about pressure stuff and just press as hard as you can all the time. Also, don't forget that it will always be much easier to blend into a darker shade, and it's a lot harder to blend things into a brighter shade. So start with a bright tone and then blend in the darker shades. How to create good composition for illustration. Rule of thirds and a triangle between points of interest. That's really all you need. Also, a good ratio between dark and light areas and a little bit of play between them. Who are some artists that influence your work? There are so many, but this does give me a good chance to redeem myself and pronounce his name correctly, Tangerhui, instead of Tanzihui. I always say it wrong, but it's Tangerhui. I love his shape design, and still a lot of Sergei Kolosov and Peter Jablonski and all of the other amazing artists in the world. What changes have you noticed in your work since marriage? That's an interesting question. I think it's actually been pretty good because there's a certain sense of stability where you can really focus on your work and not have to worry about dating and all of that stuff. You have someone who's gonna be there for you. So, overall, I think it's actually a really good thing for being productive. Of course, when you eventually have a kid, that will go all out the window. Can you rag on Jimmy Yin to do more animations? Sure, Jimmy, do more animations. No, wait, actually, don't do more animations. Do some corner kick illustrations. We're gonna get this corner kick thing going. Will you ever do another About Cynics? You know, I think I will, but not anytime soon. I'll probably wait until I'm gonna have a kid someday, and then I'll do an updated one. What is the most important lesson you've learned through your life? Oh, that's a deep one. I would say the importance of positivity and just being happy. Just letting things go, being non-attached, and just letting yourself be positive and happy is the most important thing. Just always release yourself from any negativity and let it flow away. Do you recommend studying life or other artists more? Well, for short-term gains, I recommend studying artists, and for long-term gains, I recommend studying life. What tablet do you use? It's actually an Intuos 2 6x8, and I think it's maybe 16 years old, so it's probably older than some of the viewers watching this. Why have birds? Well, if you can't have cats or dogs, birds are probably the most intelligent and personable pet you can have. They can be really loud though, so watch out for that.
Do you know the way?
No, I do not know the way. Any plan to publish your own art book? Yes, actually, after I do this whole corner kick thing, I think I will try to do some kind of mech art book, hopefully sometime. I just gotta make a bunch of cool mechs first. Why Painter? Because I really like the brush engine and the interface is really intuitive to me for some reason. I feel like I work faster in Painter than any other program, so that's super important. Where do babies come from? Oh, that's a tough one. Somewhere between the cross streets of narcissism and desperation. I think that's where they come from. Of course, sometimes it's just a happy accident, but that can be our little secret. How to overcome art block? Do studies. Lots of studies. Art studies, photo studies, anything of study. Just do some studies and you're over your art block. Pineapple on pizza? Well, I was hoping we wouldn't have any controversial questions, but here we are. I actually don't like pineapple on pizza. I think my sweets and savories require a very specific ratio, and pineapple is just too overpowering in the sweet department. Now, if you want a good ratio of sweet and savory, pizza on pineapple, that's where it's at. Is Street Fighter V trash? Yes, yes it is. Oh well, that does it for Facebook, so next up is Patreon. Has comics ever been something you considered playing around with? I actually experimented around with a bunch of comic stuff way back in the past, and I'm sure I'll keep experimenting around with comics in the future. It's not my main passion, but I still find it pretty fun. Music. Are you musical? What do you most enjoy and does it influence your work? I've played guitar since I was a kid, and I consider myself somewhat musical. I definitely love music. The guitar thing goes pretty off and on though. Sometimes I'll go through a year where I'm playing tons of guitar, and then I'll go through a couple years where I don't really touch it that much. But it's kind of fun because I always come back to it and it feels very refreshing once in a while. I don't think it influences my work though. Would you consider yourself passionate about art or would you say it's different? I'm actually very passionate about art. It's still something that I love and think about all the time. If I wanted to be known for anything, I would love to be known as the world's biggest art fan because I absolutely love art. What is the medium that is appealing you the most? Are you actually good using it? Do you think it's possible to not be good at what you love the most? It's certainly possible because the medium I love the most is probably gouache. I love looking at gouache work. I don't know, I guess oil's pretty great too, but that's without saying. But when I see good gouache work, it really inspires me, and I've never got good at using it. In fact, I barely dabbled in it, but it's one of those long-term goals. Someday I'll get good at gouache. Have you met any colorblind artists that paint? Well, I don't personally think I know of any offhand. I have heard that Teo Prince is colorblind. I don't know if that's confirmed or not. But to my knowledge, it's not going to hurt you that much as a painter. I feel like you can still focus on just warm and cool. Hopefully, you can see a difference between warm and cool, and then just experiment around with value. I can tell you this, if Teo Prince is colorblind, then it's definitely not going to hurt you at all. Hey, it's Dylan Chuna Chat. I love this guy's art. This guy has a great Instagram, so you all should definitely check it out. He does amazing life drawing stuff. There's a really good looseness to it, so seriously, check it out. Anyway, first time I met you, you told me you didn't want to get a job and you enjoy what you were doing at the time. It really stuck with me. Like, I was always worried about how I was going to make it as an artist. I was all about building a portfolio and training my skills and networking and looking for the secret way to get a break in the industry. But along the way, I feel like I had forgotten why I got into art in the first place. Fast forward like 3 years later, I finished school, worked at a few places, and one question still remains: what brush do you use? You know what? On second thought, don't check out his Instagram. It's really not that special. Cynics, could you tell us what was your most important concept knowledge that you took out from another field and incorporated in art? Maybe a few of them. Well, there's always aspects you can take from other creative concepts and apply to art, such as things about cooking and things from music about rhythm and everything. But I think my favorite thing to incorporate in art, and it has a little bit in modern art, is more of the idea that the energy at which you produce something will greatly affect how it makes people feel. In music, this is very obvious. If you play something with a very sad feeling, it'll make people feel sad. Or if you play the same thing, the same notes, but with a lot of positive energy, it'll make people feel more positive. The same thing goes for making lines. If you make a line that's very confident, people will feel more confident in looking at it. It's a little bit of the Jackson Pollock philosophy. How do you get through the period where almost everything you make you feel looks horrible? How many hours a day do you do painting now? Is there a course you recommend? Well, the most important thing to remember when things are looking horrible, which does happen to me too, is that you can't get attached to anything. Don't be afraid to just get rid of them, wipe the slate clean. You don't have to be attached to anything, so even if you make something that's bad, just have a positive enough outlook to say, oh well, that was bad. The next one will be better. And if the next one's horrible too, that's fine. You tell yourself the next one will be better. And maybe you do some study or something to readjust your brain. And as for how many hours a day I paint, I don't know, it's very random. Sometimes 0, sometimes like 10. It's just all over the place and there's no real schedule to it. Hey, here's a similar question. How do you get past the rut? I seem to have plateaued and am struggling to improve. I've tried figure studies, life drawing, etc. Maybe I'm getting too old to take in new information. I don't believe for a second that this has anything to do with age. I think maybe you've been focusing too much on figure studies and life drawing stuff. Maybe too academic. Maybe you need to loosen up and really go crazy. Make some silly cartoony stuff. Just abandon all your fundamentals for once in a while and just let yourself have fun and play around. Put some faces on inanimate objects and make up stories to go with them. If you get as experimental as you can, you'll find that when you come back to doing figure studies and life drawings and everything, they'll have a little bit more interest to them, and maybe you'll be able to incorporate some of that fun nonsense into your more academic stuff, which can be a great way to break through to the next level. You always say you are a lazy artist. What do you like to do when you don't do art or teach art? I'd say I watch a lot of movies and TV type things. I think I've watched more movies than anyone I've ever met, and I also watch a lot of YouTube and Twitch stuff when I'm being super lazy, although I'm trying to cut back on that because I could just waste all day watching Twitch and YouTube. Binge watching YouTube channels about people making scale models and dioramas, watching highly repetitive speedruns on Twitch. Yeah, there's a lot of things I could waste my time on. Ooh, and it looks like we got a twofer. I know you tried to write before you got into art. Have you considered going back to storytelling with new eyes that you've learned from visual arts? Maybe combine the two to graphic storytelling. Well, of course, I'm trying to write more. I'm writing my little corner cake story, and I'm writing some other stuff too. So I am going back more into storytelling. Although I don't know if it's from eyes related to visual arts, or I think the valuable part is just being older and having more stories to go from. Alright, time to check out what exciting questions Discord has brought me. Any advice for someone that's just starting out figure drawing and is having a hard time keeping proportions in check while juggling so much anatomical information? Yeah, don't worry too much about anatomical information. Just focus on the simple, big proportional shapes. Keep everything very simple in shape. The anatomical stuff can all come later once you mastered simple shapes and proportions. Ooh, and I think these are like twin questions because they both ask what my end game is or what a good end game to have for any artist is. I already mentioned it a little, but I think the end game for most artists is to just be able to travel around and publish art books and just do little speaking things, talk to other artists and get paid for it. I don't know, that seems like a great time. If you can go back in time and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be? Probably to not sell your Netflix stock, you dummy. Oh, I could have had so much money. Cynics, do you have any strange art habits? Let's see. I always draw in my lap, which is pretty weird, and I even do that with the tablet. And in fact, I usually face like a different direction and away from the screen with my tablet, so it's kind of weird. Apparently, I don't know. Every time people see me do it, they're like, "Why do you face that way when you're drawing and facing the other way?" I don't know. It's stupid. I also like to draw a lot of spirals before I do any digital painting. I guess that's a little bit of a habit. Hi, Cynics. I'm having difficulties with perspective drawing, doing exercises and studies help, trying to imagine the world in boxes and cylinders, etc. But if I try to draw an environment correctly in perspective, it feels stiff and unimaginative. I end up with things plopped on a grid. Any advice on how to fix this without suffocating under grid lines and nerves? This is actually a pretty good question. I see this happen a lot, and the important thing is to not start with all of your grids and your perspective and everything, but instead to focus on fun shapes and maybe do little tiny thumbnails of interesting shape compositions. Focus on appealing shapes, don't worry at all about perspective stuff, and then at the end, once you've already made some interesting shapes, then you can start to implement aspects of perspective. But never start with perspective lines because you're right, it will make everything feel super stiff and unimaginative. You'll find yourself always trying to line things up, and everything will just look horrible. At Cynics, will you be my boyfriend? Well, I'll have to clear it with my wife, but she'll probably be fine with it, so sure. Bonus points if you pretend to be an Asian girl. How do you stop yourself from staying up till 6 in the morning and sleeping half the day away? Well, I have these chewable melatonin tablets, and they actually work pretty good. How did you motivated yourself to do boring stuff? All those studies and practices? Well, they're only boring if you think they're boring, and I personally love doing studies and practices because they help me get better. Also, how to draw facial expressions? It's mostly just lips and eyebrows. Can you tell us about the most rebellious student you've had? Well, when I was teaching art to 10-year-olds, they were all pretty rebellious. The hardest part is just getting them to stay in their seat, and they always want to ask you weird questions like how much money you make. One of them told me I look like Bill Nye, and I said thanks, and then they said it wasn't a good thing. How do I force myself to do more studies? I usually just end up only drawing from imagination most of the time. Who cares about studies if you're drawing from imagination? Just have fun and draw from imagination. If you run into a roadblock, then you can do a study to help you overcome it. But if you don't feel like there's a limitation you're trying to overcome, then just keep drawing from imagination. You should watch District 9 and Book of Eli if you haven't. They're amazing movies. Also, what's your favorite movie, especially in the design aspect? Well, District 9's amazing, and Book of Eli, it's okay. It wouldn't make any top 100 list. But I do absolutely love Neil Blomkamp movies, so District 9, Elysium, all those things, they all have my favorite design aspect of recent years. But when it comes to all-time favorite design movies, I have to go with the classics like Aliens and Blade Runner. Overall, though, my favorite movie changes all the time because I love way too many movies. Cynics, any advice on how to keep working on a bigger project both in planning and keeping your willpower up? Yeah, you just really need to be passionate about a project. You shouldn't be struggling to keep your willpower up, because I can tell you if your passion is not completely into the project, then other people won't fall in love with it either. Other than that, just don't get too obsessed with planning. Dive in there and start making stuff and adjust things and plan it as you go. Any recent adventures in cooking or just food in general? Oh man, I feel like I'm pretty bad at cooking. Well, not cooking in general, just cooking meat. I feel like I never get meat the way I want it. I don't know. As far as food in general goes, I've been really into like northern Chinese style pig ear and also Korean style jjajangmyeon. And we also finally got a place around my house that makes amazing banh mi's, so everything's going pretty good on the food front. Oh, you got another one? How much art do you do outside the stuff you share online? Well, not much really. I mean, I do a lot of traditional stuff that you never see, but digitally, I usually stream when I'm just messing around and doing sketching and painting, so most of it gets shared online. A lot of the digital stuff that doesn't get shared elsewhere usually at least gets put on Patreon. But yeah, there's an okay amount of traditional stuff I don't put anywhere. Which is your favorite track from Trout Mask Replica? Well, I have no idea what that is, but let me find out and I'll be right back. Oh man, I am not into this discordant art rock nonsense. Let's just say Pachuco Cadaver and move on. Hey Cynics, do you have any favorite video game art? Yeah, a lot. I would say one of my all-time favorites is Homeworld 2 art, but there's really been a lot of great stuff lately. How do you plan a video? Like, how do you organize your thoughts and make them into a coherent, logically progressing thing? Man, it sounds really complicated when you phrase it like that. I usually just think of a topic and start rambling on it in the past, trying to get out points as they come to mind. Although for the past year, I've been actually writing stuff out a bit beforehand, so it's not so rambly and nonsensical. I don't know, it's like anything, you just start doing it and eventually stuff comes out. Do you feel like you do make better art when you're having a particular emotion, particularly emotions like being sad, angry, etc.? What is your experience with this? I think I only make good art when I'm happy. When I'm sad or angry, I usually don't even do art. Angry art is usually the worst art. Sad art, I don't know, I guess it can be somewhat okay, but I usually just don't feel like drawing when I'm sad. Happy art is definitely the best art. How do you go about doing a proper study, not some puny, weak little copy? Well, you need to analyze things like crazy. You need to be all super obsessive autismo when it comes to analyzing things. Unless you mean like how to just study something, in which case, I don't know, I like to be super obsessive. Like when I was younger and I was studying how arms worked and muscle connections, I would just get in the mirror and really be trying to analyze things, feeling around on different tendons in my arm, really trying to dissect things and figure out how everything works. Taking awkward shirtless pics, all that good stuff. What's the color of your toothbrush? Actually, it's purple right now for whatever reason. What's some encouragement you'd give young artists whose motivation has been crushed by a teacher, parent, friend, etc.? Oh, that's a tough one. Your friends should definitely not be crushing your motivation. You can pick those. Teachers and parents, that's a little trickier, but you can at least try to share your positivity with them. Let them know you're passionate about it. Don't like try to convince them in angry ways. Just be like super excited and passionate and let them feel that and they'll understand. Some deep down part of them wants you to be happy, so if you just approach them with the right amount of positivity, I think you can get through to them. Generally, what brand of sketchbooks do you use currently and how fast do you burn through them nowadays? In the past, I always used Canson sketchbooks, and they're pretty okay, like hardcover, spiral bound things. Although right now I have about 5 different sketchbooks. I have one for pencil, one for marker, one for pen. It's kind of a mess, and I don't really know what I'm doing, but it's kind of fun to have a lot. I'm not super active in my sketchbook, so I'd say I'd burn through one about every 6 months or so. I'm having a pretty bad art block. Can you give me some strength? Sure, I'm holding up my hand right now. Just hold up your hand too. Take my strength. It'll be good. Trust me, I'm doing it. I'm doing it right now. I can feel the energy. Just don't worry too much about it. Do some studies. Try drawing with your left hand. Just do some random stuff. It will pass. It always passes. Don't worry. The more you do art, the less art blocks you'll have. Hey, Cynics, what gives? I don't know. Any tips for artists on general marketing or social media presence when it comes to networking or building an audience? Yes, the most important thing is to be super consistent when you're starting out. Upload something every day. I don't know, like a sketch page on Instagram or something. Do your little tags. Maybe upload one page on Twitter every day. I don't know. And reach out to people. Not in like a self-serving way, but if you see something you like on Instagram or Twitter or wherever, just like comment and say like, oh, that's cool, I like how you did this thing. For the record, Instagram's probably the best place to build your audience right now, but you should also be a member of some Discords and do stuff like that. In this internet age, do you think art is getting more homogenized or diverse? Bonus question, how has the internet affected your art? Well, I think art and design as a whole have evolved a ton over the past, say, 20 years. You know how hard it was to see a bunch of cool, interesting things from different places or have resources and references for like industrial design or costumes or anything? It used to be really difficult. Now you have infinite inspiration all around you all the time. So you don't have like little pockets of different things going on quite as much. But I want to say overall art is more diverse because there's more different visual libraries interacting with each other. And I was never an artist without the internet, so I don't really know how it's affected me. What has been your experience working as an art teacher? Can it get boring at times? Did you learn a lot about your own art from having to teach others? What are some of the most effective methods for helping others improve? Well, I like it a lot, and it doesn't get boring for me because I try to limit the amount of it I do. I definitely learn a lot about my own art from having to teach. Having to teach is really one of the best ways to learn, and every teacher will tell you that. I think the most effective way for helping others improve is like doing paint overs and critiques. It's one thing to just explain something, but when they actually see it applied to their own stuff, it really makes the big difference. How do you feel about the art direction in a lot of AAA games? Well, it's pretty random. I don't know. There's a lot of good ones and a lot of bad ones. And why do a lot of Western artists that try to draw anime fail horribly? I think the main problem with trying to draw anime if you have a Western art background is that you need to kind of shut off your brain and stop worrying about planes and form, which is really hard to do if you've been drilling that stuff into your head all the time. You need to be able to place stuff on shape and aesthetic alone. It's a whole different mindset. Why can shape language definitely be taught and how? I know you're kind of giving me a hard time because I said it can't be taught, but I don't mean you can't teach the principles. I just mean you can't teach shape language as like a specific thing. The more you define it, the more it becomes less appealing because everyone does it. Shape appeal always needs to have a certain aspect of individuality and creativity going forth. It's like how you can teach people the basic structure of songs, but that doesn't mean you can teach them to make a hit song. What would you say is the difference between good, alright, and bad art teachers in schools? Are they bad because of their methods, or is it the curriculum's fault? I mean, personally, I've never had an art teacher, so I can't speak to this as well as some of you could, but I would assume teachers are bad just because they don't adapt that well. If you're not constantly adapting and changing your teaching curriculum, then you're probably going to be falling behind and doing people a disservice. Cynics, do you love furries? No. And finally, let's see if 4chan has any good questions. Why does your rendering suck blank blanks? Why can't you render properly like any able artist? Well, that's sort of a loaded question. I think I can render alright, but personally, I don't really care about rendering that much because I'm much more interested in design and I think rendering's boring. Failed now teaches. Don't all teachers go through that development? I think every other teacher at my art school is either a current professional or a retired professional, so whoops, looks like I snuck in there. According to you, what is the best way to improve fast besides drawing a lot? Well, aside from drawing, I guess looking at as much art as you can, looking at art videos like DVDs by Joseph Zbukvik on watercolor painting, just anything you could find. Even surrounding yourself with good artists will help you improve a lot faster. What's the best tip you got for someone learning how to paint texture? Well, different textures are all about their reflectivity, so if you can master the contrast levels of different textures and understand which ones have speculars and which don't, then I think you'll be off to a good start. Why did you leave the possibility of animation in your project? Is too much for you, blank? Yes, it actually is too much for me. It would probably take up all of my time and I wouldn't be able to do anything else, so it's not really an option. Are you going to try to do more finished, fully rendered illustrations? It just feels like wasted potential sometimes. Man, I feel like my wife wrote half of these. I really do want to do more finished illustrations. Maybe if I start focusing on like a book or something, it'll get me in the mood because I really don't like rendering that much, but Will I make it with my animu art? No. What kind of anxiety was it you struggled with, and did it affect your art in any way? Well, it was a bit of agoraphobia and a lot of existential dread that just really crippled me, so it did affect my art because I just stopped doing art and I shut myself off and just played video games and wasted all my time and slept all day. So yeah, it was kind of a big mess. What do you think of the art community of IC? Do you think it's a useful place for learning, or is it a detrimental crab bucket? Well, it's definitely a crab bucket, but I like crabs, so that's kind of okay. I don't know, it's definitely not the best place for learning, to be honest, but I've been occasionally coming by to post nonsense for years. Let me tell you a quick art story. Obviously, conceptart.org used to be a huge thing where all the professionals went, but around that time there was also another forum called Eat Poo, and Eat Poo was just like the wild nonsense place where everyone was kind of shitty to new people, and it was a lot of fun. The interesting thing was that there were also a lot of professionals on there and they would just do dumb stuff as well. And, it was an interesting little dynamic that happened there. Tons of drama, tons of craziness, and just a good time by all. I feel like that's kind of what IC wants to be, but without the pedigree of knowing your critiques are coming from professionals, it just doesn't have the same effect. Oh well, I really do love crab though. It's my favorite thing to eat ahead of pork, chicken, beef, fish, everything really. Crab is number one. Which is the most patrician fetish and why is it 2D armpits? Well, I guess patrician things are pretty decadent and useless, and what's more useless than like a cleanly shaven armpit? So I guess, yeah, that's a pretty good one. And you throw in some 2D, and sure, what could be more patrician than that? You can always tell nobility by the purity of their armpit. What's your favorite fruit? Ooh, that's a tough one. I would have to say probably golden kiwis. Ooh, mangoes are pretty good too, though. What type of people make it? What type of people never make it? I'm constantly afraid of drawing for years and still having under 500 followers by the time I'm 30. Ooh, well, unfortunately, negative and worried people usually have trouble making it, and the people that do make it are the ones that are the most confident and positive. Aside from that, just be super passionate and enthusiastic about art. People like that. Can you identify why you failed as a concept artist? Is there any tips you would give to an aspiring concept artist? I know I failed because I definitely wasn't ready for the pressure of the job and the stress of it and all that stuff. It wasn't really what I wanted to do, but I took the job and it just messed me up. The biggest tip I have for aspiring concept artists is to really just focus on shape design and thumbnails. Companies do not care at all about your rendering skills, they just want to see cool shapes and good design aesthetic. Thumbnails all day, every day. What do you think of Proco? Personally, I've never met him, but my friends who have met him say he's a pretty cool guy, so that's a good thing. It seems like he really enjoys what he does. I feel like we're very different types of artists, so I can't really give you any strong critique on anything. I think it'd be fun to hang out with him. Well, it looks like the thread was closed due to a giant food to storm, but maybe I can check out the archive and see if I missed any questions. Here we go. Let's see. What are your plans, future career? Already talked about that stuff. Concept art, stress. Yeah. Can you tell Psychra I said hi? He's a real cutie pie. Sure. Psychra, anonymous person says hi. Are you a devout follower of our Lord and Savior Loomis? Seriously, do you recommend his books? Personally, I recommend you check out all different art anatomy books when you're starting out. You'll definitely find ones that speak to you more than others. I guess Hogarth is pretty weird, but Loomis is a good place to start. I don't know, Bridgman's fine too, I guess. I thought Velpu was your Lord and Savior, oh well. Alright, last question. Who is your biggest art rival currently? How did you meet your wife? Does she do art? Have you done paintings of your what's your 4chan in general? Great place to post art, blah blah blah, massive community. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Do you plan on making comics in the future? Biggest art rival? I don't know. Ahmed Aldori? That guy keeps getting better than me. I met my wife online dating. She has no interest in art. I have done a couple little portraits of her and things like that. I think most of 4chan is pretty boring aside from IC. Do you think it's a great place to post your work and blah blah blah? I don't know, not really. I don't think it's a great place to post your work. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Hopefully a lot better at art than I am now. And yeah, I'll try to make a couple little comic things in the future. Alright, well, I guess that's it for my AMA. Sorry if I skipped some questions. I tried to avoid too much repetitions or questions I couldn't squeeze into a quick answer. Although, maybe I'll try to answer some questions in the comments below. Meanwhile, we can finally check back on our Bridal Peach painting. It looks like it's finally done. It's not super dynamic, but it'll do. Now we just need to reach 500,000 subscribers by the time another major Metroid game comes out. Alright, well, it's been fun, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you all so much for helping this channel reach another milestone, and also thank you for watching this video. If you want to help out at all, be sure to check out my Patreon, and you can join the ranks of all of these wonderful people. We even have a Patreon Discord now with little assignments and things. Alright, see you everyone.